and welcome. This is a Billified bite, and I really appreciate you checking them out. We're going to try to get a few more of these. It's me, my fork, my plant, my lamp that I didn't turn on because it was making me glow. You ever get a message? Yeah, we all get messages, but I mean, you ever get a message from someone who says, "Hey man, big fan. Also, you sound kind of dumb." Yeah, I got one of those. And here's the funny thing. The person's not completely wrong. I'm going to admit that. It's just not in the way that you're thinking. I think that a lot of times we say things on the radio. We're talking about high prices, right? And this guy texts, and he says he's a fan, and he's also one of my biggest critics. Like, he puts both those in there. Okay. So then he proceeds to basically ask if I've ever heard the news. And I know where he's going. He's talking about Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. And then he says, you might want to sound a little smarter. And I read that, and I thought to myself, fair enough. I honestly, fair enough. A little aggressive to open up on a Sunday morning, but hey, it's all right. Here's the thing with these text messages. I want them. I like them. When we were talking about this, though, prices were going up. They were going up before anything was happening overseas. Gas was, not as high as it is, but it was high, which then in turn made any trucking more difficult, right? So food prices were high. And can someone explain to me housing? It's kind of out of control in those areas. And even when things ease up, like the strait reopens, and all, prices don't drop the way people think they do. Once they go up and the money's being spent, they just kind of stay there. And that's the part that I think nobody likes to admit. That's all. So could we sound smarter? I'm sure. I am sure. He also hit me on the fact that he feels like I swear too much and he can't listen in public. And I have been trying to work on that. This text came in a couple weeks ago, and he's right. Because I was thinking, if every sentence has a swear word, none of them hit. You know what I mean? So I have really tried to focus on not doing it. I don't even know if I was conscious of how much it was happening. Really. And I'm not doing this to try to necessarily clean it up, but because I'm trying to sharpen it up, you know? And here's what I always think in analogies and things. Like, if everything's a hammer, eventually you're just yelling at drywall. You know what I mean? You can't come bam, bam. So I hear that. I understand it. He listed off podcasts, including Bill Burr and others, where they swear, but not as much. And that's kind of what he said. And then he went on about the ads popping up in the middle of people talking. And I know that's annoying for a lot of people. I'll say this. We're building the plane while we're flying it. It's not perfect, but it's real. It's absolutely real. And that's the part I like. And I would like to encourage anybody to send us a text, leave us a voicemail, right? Tell us we're great. Tell us we suck. It doesn't matter. Have some real criticism. This guy had points. He did. The number is 585-206-8866. I welcome that. Just don't be boring, right? Just don't be boring about it. I want this to be a conversation. I want you to be part of it. I want you to bring things to me. 585-206-8866. And getting a text like that can be a little uncomfortable. I want to talk about being uncomfortable because I just finished my second semester of grad school. And when my college roommate was in town and we're talking and I'm in the mental health counseling program, he kind of looks at me and is like, why? He goes, I just want to go home and sit on my couch. And I've had other people say to me, I couldn't do it again. I give you a lot of credit. And I feel like sometimes it's sort of like damning with faint praise, like, wow, good for you. But I've had to do a lot of self-exploration this semester, like digging deep. People talk about healing, right? I don't know that we're ever really taught what is healing. What is that? Well, it's forgiveness. I don't know. It's like going in and realizing the things that you believe about yourself are actually kind of bullshit. That's the thing. Because I've always had this thing hanging over me, being an underachiever. I had a teacher who once pulled me aside and said, "You have the potential to be an Ivy League kid." And I'm thinking, dude, I'm the barely get to class on time kid. I like goofing around. I like playing. I like all that stuff. And then I graduate. And when I graduated high school, my father walks up and says, "I don't know whether to shake your hand or kick your ass. Kids dumber than you walked off with awards. All you had to do was drool and you got an award." And you kind of laugh at that. And if it wasn't for my mom's dad, my maternal grandfather, who's like, "Whoa, hey, relax, graduation day." But that kind of sticks with you. And remember how I talked about having these things that gnaw at you? Like, my buddy, and he is his Delta 98. Could we get it up to 120 miles an hour? And that could be kind of scary. Can you control a car? But I couldn't let it go. I had to do this. And I used to joke, I'm the least educated in my family. Everyone else has masters, doctorates. I got a 4-year degree and went into radio, and I loved radio. I loved being in it. But again, remember that gnawing thing in the back of your head, that thing that you have to prove in some way, at least to yourself, because you left something on the table, right? You left something on the table, whatever it was. And I that's the only thing I can think of when I do all these dumb things. And it never really went away from me. And education was such a thing that I think it became my rebellion was to like do adequate. I mean, high B's when you probably could have had A's. And this semester, I had to do a lot of digging into stuff. Matter of fact, like a lot of my grades came back, and there were some lower grades, my overall grades. Let me just brag for a moment. All in the 90s, I got to say. I'm very happy. But there were some things that went down because I realized as I'm digging into things, I could see where generational trauma played into it and how even people from Ireland and that whole mentality and that I didn't have self-worth. I really never really had any self-worth. I had attention. I had being the funny guy. I had doing ridiculous stuff, like climbing to the top of a bathroom stall and playing bombs away, which, by the way, can I just say, if you hit the water clean from that height, it's a skill. That is a skill set. I mean, a little jackass skill set, but a jackass skill set is a jackass skill set. I would do things like sliding across the locker room floor, completely naked on my back, kicking off the back window of the shower, right? The shower heads. That was my identity, but it wasn't my confidence. It was just noise, right? It was just noise. It was just attention. It was a way, but in some way, it was validating for me. And then you go back in your life and you realize, like I have talked about being molested, and I've talked about it for many, many, many years. I did it on the radio. I was on a panel for Bavona Child Advocacy Center. And I don't know, again, like when you talk about healing, what is that? I was a kid. It's the 80s. You're not thinking clearly about stuff. You're thinking, did I do something that would be considered gay? And I know that that's horrible, right? Because, but it made you different. Ask somebody who's gay. Sometimes it's not an easy walk. Does this make me that? You're in locker rooms. I wouldn't kiss a girl because I'm terrified that she would know that I had done something. With a guy, I'd done something that would be considered gay, and I don't even understand it. And all this happened when I was 7 years old, and I didn't do it. It was done to me, or I was coached on how to do things. That's confusion. That stays with you. And the thing is, So what do you do, right? And once you start to realize that inside you, you weren't that. You are who you are, and that was just something that happened to you. It doesn't. You're not a victim. You don't have to be that. But what it does to you though is you start chasing validation, right? For me, it was sports and attention. Later, it was radio, right? That was great validation. I would work hard to do something funny. And women gave me tremendous validation. But there's no self-worth. Drinking, and then women, and drinking, and you had all kinds of mistakes. And it was really anything that kind of says you matter. And what you start to realize is, as much as you preach to your own kids and things that real self-esteem comes from within and you get real satisfaction, everything in your own life was all external. It wasn't internal. So when it's gone, you got nothing. You know what I mean? And I want to kind of reset here for a second, because this isn't about a text message. This is what happens when your entire life is built on proving something you don't actually believe about yourself. And I saw that this weekend because I fell into an old pattern, right? I fell into, not right, you wouldn't know, but I did. I fell into an old pattern, and I'm mortified. I am so worried that I have screwed up something that was actually very important to me, that I'm not sure what to do. I really don't. You get the panic, right? Anxiety, needing instead of choosing. And it's wild because you can do all this work on yourself and still, one moment, you're right back in it, right? And if anybody who's ever known someone who's been living with an addiction or has been in addiction themselves, it is not easy. It's like emotional muscle memory, except instead of riding a bike, you're just ruining your own night, right? Or you're ruining your own whatever. And that's the part that has been really tough. It's been something like every day I find myself thinking about what happened this weekend more than I ever did, right? And now I can see my decisions of things that I did playing out in my kids' lives. And I learned all kinds of things in child psychology that I went, ooh, good. Like there were really days that I had to step back from assignments, and I got a couple of 60s on assignments. They weren't worth a whole lot, but they were still that. And that's a different kind of accountability when you're doing that, right? That's not theory. That's not theory. That's the real shit. That's the real work. That's the real healing. When you kind of start to come to, wow, I've been doing this, and that's not really who I am, and it's not who I want to be. So I would say if you're trying to change in any way, no matter what it is, if you're trying to grow in some way, it's messy. You'll think you're past something. And then there it is again. But the difference now is you see it. You see it. I saw this weekend, I feel like maybe too late. I don't know. I talked about it in an earlier episode this week of what went on, and I'm just so shook up by it. And here's the other thing too, like, you know, this has been a real year of change for me. I had I made a lot of changes in things. My dad passed away in July. I think it was around this time of year that my youngest son got to see him last, and we spent a weekend together. And I don't think Jameson, because his mom and I thought it would be an okay, and I thought it was a good thing because there was going to be a lot of support around. Went to the South, so my dad didn't see him as much, and I didn't see my dad as much as things. But that was like a really special time. And then it was just a few months after that he passed. And then there were some personal things, things that I had put to an end about a year ago. And then there was other things that would pop up. I don't know how to phrase that. But then the grad school thing came up. And again, it's like you left something on the table, right? Somebody comes to you and says, hey, I got a crazy idea. We have an opening and I can't go to the waiting list because everybody's already in classes. Oh, and by the way, it's Saturday and classes start Tuesday. So what do you think? And there is that part of me that thinks that I needed to prove that I could be the academic achiever that I should have been. I underachieved in both high school and college. I did much better in college, but I underachieved in college. I mean, come on. I was having a little fun. I also learned, all that validation stuff, the power of funny, right? I got away with more shit that I don't think people would get away with because you could do it with a wink and a smile. And there was just some way that I was able to pull stuff off that I don't, because I think I got caught doing bombs away in the bathroom outside the cafeteria because people were cheering and yelling and someone came in, and when they saw it, I think the guy just started laughing, right? And so those are the things. It's ridiculous. The point being, as you go back through, right, this has been a year of trying to dig through the muck and figure out, how did I get here? How did I become this person? Not how did I get here career-wise, that sort of thing. How did I get here as this person? Why do I have these patterns of things? How come I've been in these relationships that, you ever look at things and you go, it didn't matter who the other person was, things usually played out this way. I don't want that anymore. And I got to tell you, I am... I just hope I didn't ruin things that there's something that's very important to me, just important to me. And I'd like to see, I felt like it was going in a great way. And then I think I mishandled something and then tried to overcorrect. And it's just like racing a car, man. Don't overcorrect too hard or you're going right into the wall. And I went right into the wall. That's the way I see it. So what does all this mean, right? I mean, what I'm learning is self-worth has to come from inside. And it's something I have said before, but it can't come from a text. And it can't really come from a relationship, even though you want it. It can't come from a microphone. Because if it doesn't, you just keep chasing it in places that can't give it to you. Right? I mean, that's what we do. So, to the guy who texted 585-206-8866. 8866? Yeah, 205 8866. I can't remember. I want him to know this. I hear you. I appreciate you. We're going to work on sounding smarter. But more importantly, here's what I'm working on. I'm working on becoming someone, you ready? Who doesn't need to prove it. And I hope you do the same.